Yep.
I forgot. I was about to be like, hello, everybody.
Hi.
Yeah. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of The Young and the Anxious. My name is Austin Trudell. I'm accompanied by my co-host um, and co-creator of the Young and Anxious podcast. Um, of course, with this being our first podcast, it's the production value is pretty low,
Not professional.
not professional in the slightest. We don't want to keep it like this. We don't want this to be our studio. We want, of course, to get a much better setup. But right now, this is basically just us introducing ourselves and kind of letting everybody know who already doesn't know us who we are and what we're about, our struggles and everything like that, as well as just stuff that we're interested in and kind of set the tone of what this podcast is going to be from now on. But I guess I can tell a little bit about myself and then I'll hand it off to you. Like I said before, my name is Austin Trudell. I'm 29 years old. I to kind of give you a backstory on how we kind of created this or came out with this, the idea for this is we both suffer from anxiety and depression, and we wanted to kind of shed light on that subject as well as other things that interest us. Like, we don't want to have the podcast just focus on that because we don't want everything to be kind of gloomy. We want people to laugh and enjoy themselves while they're watching us and everything like that. We don't want it to keep it, on a low level, just talking about
Sad stuff.
right, exactly, the sad stuff and the stuff that makes us anxious and stuff like that. But the that's the whole premise of the podcast, is to basically just give people an idea on what it is, what it's like, for people who don't experience anxiety and depression on a daily basis or as to an extreme. We want them to be able to see two genuine people talk about the those symptoms that that wash over us and everything like that. So I I really started having anxiety when I was about 3 years old. Um, it was just something that I don't remember the story precisely. I think I was nothing was really happening. I think mom was cooking and and the smoke alarm went off and it freaked me out. And at such a young age, I even then I showed signs of like the essence of anxiety, and it just kind of snowballed from there. I've been dealing with it since then, and it's an everyday thing. So I go through my ups and downs every day. I have sometimes I have really good days, sometimes I have really bad days. Sometimes I can have really bad weeks, really bad months at a time. But of course, now later in life, I've got different things that I can look at or
Different perspectives.
well, not really different perspectives. Just like I have coping skills, coping mechanisms, stuff like that. Stuff that I've learned on my own, but also from like outside help and everything like that. But I live with it every day, and it's definitely a challenge to really do anything in the midst of an anxiety or panic attack, or even just like a high level of depression. Because people often say, oh, I don't want to get out of bed, I don't want to do this, that, and they relate to it to depression. I suffer more from anxiety, and I can tell you guys that anxiety is right up there with depression on keeping you from doing a lot of things. And it's definitely um, a challenge, but also a it's a challenge, but it's a huge learning experience for me on determining what I will and won't put up with, um, what I will stay away from, um, what really just like makes me my own person. I don't like to say that, like the reason why I don't really care to say something like that is because I feel like it's making me sound like I'm using anxiety as my personality, and that's not what I want to do at all. Anxiety is not a personality.
We don't want it to be a personality.
Right? Yeah. Because a lot of people use it as their personality, and it infuriates me. Because
it's almost like a quirky thing,
right,
that they say.
Exactly.
Like,
and, yeah. And I can't stand it because there'll be. I've met a few throughout, especially like working and everything. I've met a few people like that where we'll be discussing, and it could be. I mean, I'm talking like not necessarily coworkers, but it's mostly like when I worked at an arcade for a little less than 2 years. And a part of that arcade was a kitchen, and we would serve food and everything. Well, there'd be some times where I would serve food to a group of people, and I would notice that someone, or I would be taking their order, I would notice that someone isn't, like, they're kind of staying to themselves and everything. And when I would get to them, I'd be like, what would you like to eat today, or whatever. they would say, our production value is really low, by the way. Yeah, we keep having to refresh the screen so we can see ourselves and make sure that we're not looking stupid. But
so every 5 minutes, it's just gonna be reaching over.
We swear it's not gonna be like this every week. God no, we're really going to figure everything out and get. But anyway, getting back to there were a bunch of times where I would come across that person, and of course they would always like talk in a whisper, and they would always talk in a whisper, and I would always kind of like look over to one of the other one of the other kids or adults in the group to see what they're saying, and they would be like, oh, they have social anxiety or something like that, and that might be completely true, but to
someone who actually has it, the way that they just kind of like play it off like, oh, that's all it is. Yeah.
That was always kind of irritating to me and everything. And then there would be some people where they would like mess up their words while they're talking to me, and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I've got social anxiety. And it's like, no, like you might, but you don't. Like you're using it as a personality.
Fun, quirky thing.
Right. As a person. Yeah. But that's just a little bit about me. I've got so many stories to tell and everything like that. But I mean, it's your turn. I'm taking up a lot of the time. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my name is Abby Trudell. I'm his sister. I'm 20 years old, and I've suffered with anxiety for as long as I can remember. Like, there's no time where I can recall that I haven't been anxious. Yeah. And, it it was mainly in school. I noticed like from because I was homeschooled in kindergarten, so from first to like 11th grade, I was anxious that entire time, and I really started noticing that it was an issue when I got my first phone, and I would text my parents constantly, being like, "Hey, I need you to pick me up. I can't do this," or "Hey, like my anxiety's high. I need you to come up here and talk me down," or something like that. That's when I really noticed that it was like an actual issue. Um, and none of the teachers or counselors understood at that point. They weren't like I think now they're being trained to like help students cope with that stuff. But back then they didn't. I'm saying back then as if it was like a million years ago. I'm 20.
Yeah.
But like, a couple years ago it
Yeah.
was like not talked about at all.
And that's just it. Like, even though you're saying back then, I mean, you are referencing to just a few years ago, before I think we can say pandemic.
I
On
hope
video?
so. I hope so.
I know we can't say.
The actual.
I know we can't say the C word.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that C word. The other C word.
Yeah.
Why we probably can't say the other C
We
word.
we
either.
can't say a lot of words.
We won't. We don't want to get demonetized. But anyway.
The vid.
Yeah. So what you were saying is back then, which you were just you were just referencing just a few years ago, how even the teachers and the counselors, and actually a lot of the students didn't really deal with the same level of anxiety and
anxiousness
and everything like that you dealt with, and until the lockdown, I'll call it that, the lockdown happened. That's when a lot of people started realizing that the nervousness that they would be getting, the jitteriness and everything that they'd be getting, wasn't just like a coffee high or something like that. It was anxiety. And so a lot of people just found out, just a couple years ago, that they had like an underlying.
It was a lot of self-diagnosis, but not the bad kind.
No.
Like this, I can actually get help for this kind of self-diagnosis.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
It was, a lot of people were like, I am part of a few groups on Facebook that talk about anxiety and depression, and I can't tell you how many people who are in like their 40s, 50s, and even like 60s who will make a post on these groups, and they're saying that they're just now experiencing like those anxiety feelings. And so and I feel for them deeply, because I've understood these symptoms, these like physical feelings for
ailments.
I mean, feelings, because they're not real. I mean, they're real, but they're not real.
Yeah, it's mainly in your head.
Right.
It's all mental.
Exactly. Yeah. And so these people who are 50 years of age would be typing this long story about one day they woke up and they felt like a little chest pain, or they felt like numbness in their limbs or something like that, and they would immediately think, as you would naturally, you would think, okay, something's wrong with me. Heart attack, stroke, doesn't matter. Something along that line.
Anything scary.
Right. Yeah. Anything. Yeah. Your mind will automatically go to anything that is the worst case scenario with anxiety. And so what was happening is these people who don't experience this on a daily basis, they have gone their entire lives, 40, 50 years without having any of these symptoms. And then, one day it just punches them in the face, and they are in these stories. They're talking about, they're calling they're calling 911, and they're getting, the EMTs and fire department out to their house and everything, and nobody around them, their family, their friends and everything, they don't know what's going on because this person has never experienced anxiety before. And so everybody else around them, they're thinking, oh, they're actually
This
having,
is serious.
right, yeah, they're actually having this, what they think is, heart attack or whatever. And then these stories always end the exact same way, which they get to the hospital, and they run all kinds of tests, and everything comes back fine, everything comes back normal, and the doctor ends up telling them that it was purely just anxiety. And these people reach out to us in the group, or people who are already in these anxiety groups, and they're like, is this normal? And without a doubt, everything is everything that they've explained, how they felt, what was going through their mind, is 100% normal. And it sucks because, like, even, and this is a big thing that I wanted people to really know, is that also suffer from anxiety, that are like maybe just finding out that they have anxiety, or have dealt with it for years, or whatever it may be, that even though, and I don't mean this as like a negative, I don't mean it to be negative, but even to this day, even though I've dealt with it for so many years, like, I don't know any different, you don't know any different. Even to this day, I will have those thoughts still. I will have those physical feelings, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, I mean, it's totally something serious. I need to get checked out. But a person told me one time, and it made so much sense. It resonated so well with me. They said that you've dealt with anxiety for this long. How many times has it actually been something serious? And when I looked back at my life, being in school, out of school, just dealing with anxiety generally, I thought, how many times was it actually serious? How many times was it to the point where I had to get, medical help? And, it, of course, it still will, even though I have that in my mind, like, oh, okay, I've had, thousands of panic attacks, and I've only, gosh, I mean...
You're only 29.
Well, I mean, I'm only 29, but what I was going to say was, like, the amount of times during those panic attacks where it's actually been something that I've needed to, like, have checked out...
Yeah.
have been...
Slim.
Oh, super slim, very, I mean, it's like a fraction of the time. If that, I mean, like, I say if that doesn't make any sense. It's such a small fraction of all the times that I've actually had just a regular panic attack, or just, like, generalized anxiety. But, it's, so this podcast, I really want to talk about, what we've gone through, share stories that we've gone through, and hopefully connect with some people, and have some people relate to what we've gone through. But also, like I said in the beginning, I don't want this to be just
there's gonna be humor.
Yeah, like, I don't want anxiety and depression to be the premise of the whole thing. Granted, the name is called The Young and the Anxious. That was just a kind of a
play on words.
Yeah. I mean, that was just
a
kind
pun.
of... Yeah, I mean, because you're young, I'm anxious. It's just...
Well,
I mean, yeah.
We're both anxious. You're
say,
young to some people.
I'm young to people, like, in their 50s.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still, like, in my mind, I'm a damn...
dinosaur.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
But, to others, they're like, "Oh, you still have the rest of your life," and I'm like, "The rest of my life of this?" Like
that's another thing. It feels like you're like it it feels like you're running out of time, and then that makes you anxious. Because me being like, I felt this way the moment I turned 18. I felt like I didn't fulfill my teenage years and like what I wanted to do because I was so anxious. But I'm only 20. And I tell myself that. But I can never get it through that, like, this isn't how this isn't how it has to be.
Right, yeah. And I can go ahead and tell you that every year since I would say like yeah, since I was like early 20s, every year that has gone by and I get another year older, like for instance, when I was 23, I was always thinking, I'm 23, like
Yeah.
what have I missed because of my
Nobody
anxiety?
likes you when you're 23.
Well, all right.
Sorry.
Or, all
Sorry.
right. No. Okay.
That's the humor we're referring to.
But it's gonna be better than that.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully.
No, it's gonna be better than that.
Okay.
It's gonna be better than that. That was a good joke.
You can't expect much from
I
me
won't.
personally. But
I won't knock that. That was a good joke. You just caught me off guard and whatever. But every year when I turned a new, when I got older, that was always my thought, which was, I'm this age now. What have I missed because of my anxiety and everything like that? And so it doesn't get better. God, that sounds horrible.
it does.
That sounds
but
horrible because that's not what I mean. That's not what I mean. It does get better. Anxiety and depression do get better. What I mean is, what doesn't get better is just
the constant worrying.
well, no, that does get better. What I'm saying is like the way you handle it
Yeah.
gets
Yeah.
better. The thoughts are always going to be awful. Like you'll always run into those thoughts. You'll always run into those feelings. The way you handle it always gets better, or will get better. Whether you find like outside help or whether you figure it out on your own, the way you portray the anxiety will make it easier to deal with. And
You get
so,
older and wiser. And you-
yeah. Like you, because like one thing that I always have an issue with is like rationalizing anything, and so just going out like through my everyday life, there will be things that will happen that aren't life ending, but in my mind, they will be.
Yeah.
There'll be this huge detriment to my life, and it's something as small as like, when there was just recently where I was driving and I ran over a nail and it popped the tire, and in my mind I'm thinking, oh hell, like I'm gonna.
You're gonna have to change it. It's
Well,
gonna put a damper on your day.
Right, I'm gonna have to change it. I'm gonna have to figure everything out. I'm gonna have to change it. I'm gonna have to, find out where I can get a new tire. If I need a new tire, I'm gonna have to pay for it and everything like that. And then at the end of the day, I just remember kind of looking back and going, like, all right, it happened. I got over it. Everything was fine. And
You still went where you were driving to.
Right, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I was able to take the necessary actions to figure it out and fix the situation. And at the end of the day, everything was fine. It was fixed, and I was able to get through the day, and it wasn't the end of the world. And when I say that now, given my coping skills and everything like that, I was able to do that. Now, let's say, 10 years ago, I would have been just a basket case, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, and I feel like the same thing goes for you. It's still, I mean, you're only 20, and I can say that because
You're older than me.
I'm older
Yeah.
than you. You are only 20, and like just like someone else would say, like, oh, you're only 29 to me,
Yeah.
but you're only 20. You've got so much to to learn still about yourself, but also just the world and how it like legitimately works. Like you've seen, you know, some of the ugly,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean there are, because like being an adult is naturally scary. It's
Yeah.
fun, like it's a freedom, but it's always going to be like that naturally scary thing because you've got responsibilities now. You know, you've got more on your plate, and I know that was a big thing for you.
Yep.
Becoming an adult and everything, but when I say that it's not as scary as what your mind is making it out to be, of course that's like the pot calling the kettle black.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's me just like not not riffing off of your own thoughts, you know, because you've got your own inner monologue that's telling you this is good or bad, you know, this is scary or not, and you're gonna have me, you're gonna have mom, you're gonna have, you know, other family members, other friends that will say, you know, yeah, but you're only 20 and it's not as bad, and I feel like that, you know, kind of getting to a new topic, that's another thing that happens a lot is people will not downplay, but they'll bring it to perspective of what you're worried about, and in the again, like in the middle of worrying about something and someone brings the topic into perspective, they will it'll end up pissing you off because you don't want to hear a rational statement, a rational thought necessarily. You want to just be heard. You want to be understood that you are worrying about something, or you know, this specific thing, and you almost want the other person to jump on the bandwagon and
Yeah.
and worry just as much.
Yep.
You know. Um,
It's hard being talked down.
yeah, and we both experienced that a lot in school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was a huge thing for our school careers, which
Yeah.
was just the misunderstanding of what anxiety was and what depression was and everything. And I like what you were saying before. Yeah, I think it is getting better now that people are like really figuring out that they have um, anxiety and depression, or they've got some other neurological thing going on. And I think, yeah, you know, the school systems are really starting to kind of
Take notice.
take notice, yeah, and
Yeah.
and trying to figure out what's going on. But anyway, I mean, like that's basically like the one half of what we want to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, and everything. Yeah,
That's
you
just the anxious part.
yeah, that's just the anxious part.
Yeah.
The young part, I mean, that's just that again, it was just a name that we came out with because, you know, it was just a play on words. But um, you know, I don't know if you have anything that, like any stories or anything. I've got a story that I wanted to tell.
You can go first and let me think about it.
Okay,
Because
okay.
I don't have anything right now.
So, I figured, you know, we can tell like one story, and then we can come to a close. This is
Okay.
a
Yeah.
first episode done, and everything like that. But so my story, it takes place back when I was in middle school, and I want to say this was like sixth grade, so I was like fresh in middle school, and I have this counselor who I won't name. um, who, you know, you look towards your teachers and the counselors, just the faculty, for
The elders
the
for help.
your superiors.
Yeah.
You look for them for help and for guidance and everything. I mean, that's what they always talked about in school, is how you could always come to them, and you could always, you know,
I'm just gonna mute it.
our screen went black, so
It'll still record.
bear with us.
Yeah.
There might be times where we're like, you know, that we look dumb, but anyway, so yeah, you know, through all school year, or through all the school, through all of my school career, it was always that we were told that, you know, the teachers and the counselors, the faculty in general, were always someone that we could go to with our problems. And so, and I know you've heard this story before, so it's like a broken record, but you know, I, of course, dealt with anxiety in school, so I was having some issues, and I decided to raise my hand and let the teacher know, like, hey, I've got something going on. Is there a can I go to the counselor's office? And the teacher was okay with it. I go to the counselor's office, and that's kind of where all the shit really starts. Because she sits me down and she goes, you know, what's the issue? And I assume she's expecting me to be like, you know, oh, well,
This person said something.
right, yeah, this person said something, this person had, you know, was doing this to me, I was being bullied in some way, or something like that. Or even, like, I know that counselors not look towards, but they look for, like, possibly things that are happening at home, or you know, something dealing, like, with the kid's personal life, something along that line.
Something more physical than mental.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I could tell that when I was saying that I just felt, because I was 11, 12, I was 11, I knew what anxiety was to an extent. You know, I was still learning what that all meant, and I was still trying to figure out my own coping skills, you know, because, like, mom deals with it. And so I was able to talk to her when I was home, and of course some of her coping mechanisms wouldn't work for me.
Right.
And so what was happening was I was still trying to figure out what I could do to ease the worry, ease the panic, the bad thoughts. And obviously that day it wasn't working, and I tried explaining this to the counselor, and not to say that she wasn't a good counselor, not to say that she wasn't a good listener, a good person to vent to, but the way that she dealt with it was, in my experience, it was like absolutely horrible. You know, it was so awful. And so what ended up happening, and I'm gonna try not to, like, throw out her name, because, like, naturally when I'm talking,
I know how to edit bleeps and stuff. We're good.
do you?
I do.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I do.
No fucking way.
That's sweet.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But so what ended up happening was I explained it to her, and of course she had that, like, you know, that typical counselor, oh, you know, okay, yeah, no, I totally get it, I totally understand. And so, and how I explained it, because I remember how I explained it was, I feel jittery, I feel like I've got a lot of energy, I feel like I have, I could just basically jump out of my skin. And the way that she took care of it, and again, I'm not downplaying her being a counselor or her skills of being a counselor or anything like that. I'm just saying she dealt with it the wrong way, because a lot of people didn't know during that time you know,
It wasn't as big
that's
of a thing.
right. Yeah, yeah, and people didn't know really how to like cope with other people having it, you know. And but she said, well, if you have nervous energy, well, okay. She first asked me, do you have gym today? Because she was thinking, okay, like if this kid has gym, then when that period comes around, he can go to gym, get his energy out, and then everything will be okay for him. And I didn't have gym. It wouldn't have mattered, but I didn't have gym that day. And she goes, okay, well, I have another idea. And I was like, oh, do tell, like, because so far she hasn't been able to help me, like, no, there was no like, she wasn't saying anything to help calm me down. She had that concern, but again, she didn't know how to figure it out. And so what she did, she gets up and she goes, and you know how all like school doors have that like thin window.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So she goes and she gets like a piece of paper and she covers the thin window of her door, and which is total. It was total bullshit because her office was a corner office, so she literally had windows that led to the outside. So she was just like, is that okay? This is so kids won't see you. What I'm about to make you do, which is nothing bad. Don't call Chris Hansen. It's what I'm saying is like, she had this idea. So she gets the paper, she covers up the window, and then she goes, stand up, and I want you to do jumping jacks for 30 seconds, a minute, whatever. That part I don't remember, but she wanted me to do jumping jacks. And she goes, this is an activity that you would normally do in gym. And I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Like, really? No way.
I'm not that good at editing.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. But I was like, really? Thanks, ma'am. Like, awesome. And she goes, do jumping jacks while I like sit here and type on my computer. And then when you're done, I want you to sit down and I want you to like calm down and then go back to class. And she was covering up the window, so in case, I assume, in case a kid or another person of faculty walked by and saw this slightly chubby kid doing jumping jacks, it was probably going to look like a bully moment. Like the teacher was like, "Oh, well, that's why you're getting bullied. You're fat.
Oh my
Just do
God.
jumping jacks. We'll burn some fat, and then you can go to class, and maybe you won't get bullied." But no, because
She took energy the wrong way.
oh yeah, completely the wrong way, but because I'm young and I'm anxious. No, because I was so young and I was like looking up to my superiors. I did what she said because.
Why not?
Well, not why not. I was afraid to say like, no, I don't want to do this.
Well, yeah.
And so reluctantly, I got up and did jumping jacks, and so afterwards, I sit down, and she lets me stay for another like 5 minutes, and then she goes, okay, well, you need to go back to class. This is the you got the energy out, which I didn't. You got the energy out. Go back to class. You should feel better through the rest of the day. And I just remember getting back into class, and all I was now was out of breath, sweaty, and then anxious even more. So I mean, like, it didn't help at all. But the story, the whole base of this is just how completely oblivious these people were to like legitimate anxiety and depression. When I would go, and it was that way through my whole school career.
Yeah.
You know, through elementary school, through middle school, and when I wasn't doing online classes, it was that way during high school. And so school was never like a great time for me. You know, everybody always says, you know, oh, I miss being in high school. I miss being, you know, not having any worries and being just on a schedule of you wake up, you go to school, you come back home, and that's it. They're like, you know, now I've got bills and everything like that. I'm thinking, no, I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I'd rather deal with bills than go to school. I hated school. Excuse me, I hated school, like with a passion. School was never a fun time for me, unfortunately. Like, there was one good year that I had, and that was fifth grade. And that was like, I will always remember that year. That was the best year that I had. My classmates were awesome.
You really liked your teacher.
Oh, my teacher was amazing. My teacher was amazing, and she kept things fun and light, and whenever there was a time that there, like, you know, whenever there was a time, like, say, like a big, well, we had the Gateway in fifth grade.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I don't know if it's still called the Gateway. It was called the Gateway back when I was in fifth grade.
It was for me too. Yeah.
But like, even during times of like stress, where all kids were naturally stressed about taking this test. I mean, because they called it the Gateway, because literally it was a gateway to
Middle school.
Right. Yeah, the next grade
Yeah.
and everything, and so even during that time, she kept things so light and so positive that yes, I dealt with anxiety that year and during those times of like taking those important tests and stuff like that, but it was very easily overshadowed by how well she just made the kids feel like secure, safe, and everything like that. So, but before then, not to say that I had bad teachers, or that the schools that I went to were awful, but you know, before fifth grade, after fifth grade, and even sometimes during fifth grade, I would have those bad moments, and unfortunately, just not a lot of people understood. I mean, even like talking about it to like the other kids, like anxiety was such a new word to everybody, not necessarily to the faculty, but to the other kids. I mean, because you're young, you're going to be talking about things that just you're a young kid, and so you're going to be talking about everything that deals with you, because you're making friends and you're figuring out, like, that's another thing, is like when you're young, you overshare so much because you're just so like wanting to have someone else like relate to you, and for them to know everything about you. You know, there's no filter to what you tell kids, what you tell your classmates during that time. And so, I mean, yeah, like there were a few times where anxiety would come up in conversation, and the kids would just kind of be like, "You mean like you're worried?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Well, what are you worried about?" And that was like always like the key question that everybody would ask me, "What are you worried about?" And there was no answer. There was never a definitive answer, because it was generalized anxiety disorder, and that's exactly what it is. It is a general worry that you can't pinpoint what it actually is. But that's my story of many that I have been through. You know, it's just kind of like a peek into what I dealt with in school. I've got stories about in school, out of school, at work, just a bunch of things, you know, but of course, you know, we don't want to take up the whole day.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna let you tell your story. If you've
Okay.
got one.
I do. I
you?
do. It's
Okay.
another. When you said middle school, that reminded me of a story.
Yeah.
I was in, I want to say 7th grade, and we were reading a book in language arts about this guy who was climbing Mount Everest because his dad did, or something like that, and it was like a fiction book, and nonfiction means real, right?
Nonfiction. Yes.
Not fake.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And it was a fictional book, and there was a lot of death in said book because because climbing Mount Everest is a dangerous thing, and so I would before class even started, I would look at my teacher because she kind of got the hang of like what was wrong with me, and she would give me a pass, and I would go to the counselor's office. Well, there was this one time where this girl said something negative to me about my safety and well-being, and
Welcome to public school.
yeah, for real.
Yeah.
And the counselor, I went home and told my mom, and my mom emailed the counselor because I didn't take it seriously enough. And she called me. You remember this now?
I do.
Yeah.
And the fact that you didn't take it serious enough is bananas.
Yeah.
Because
we were in 7th grade. She couldn't hurt me. That was my reasoning, even though that's not true at all.
I mean, because like from like another person's standpoint who deals with the same thing, because something like similar happened to me, but I like my own thoughts will make it seem like they can hurt me, and so and I don't mean they as in the other person. I mean like my thoughts can hurt me, It's like, so the fact that you were threatened by bodily harm, like they threatened you with bodily harm, and you were just like whatever is insane to me, at least, because I'm thinking, what the hell, like I would have immediately been like freaking out because I
really liked the class that I was in, so I didn't really want to leave.
That wouldn't have mattered.
No,
to me, but yeah.
So I went to school the next day, and she called me in her office, and she was like, "Listen, your mom emailed me. This is what happened yesterday. Why didn't you tell me about this?" And I straight up told her, I was like, I didn't think that anything bad would happen because we're in 7th grade. We're too young to know what to do, And she looked me dead in the face and told me that she thought that I was faking my anxiety because that, and I love her.
Right,
she was awesome. I really liked her. At that moment, didn't really care for her, but because I knew deep down that I had anxiety or have, and so once she said that, I was like, okay, this is something that my mom's gonna email you about again. I went home, and then she called me in her office the next day after I had gone home and told my mom that, she said that I was faking it to get out of class. She told me, she was like, "Oh, you misunderstood what I said." No.
It's hard to misunderstand that.
Yeah. You said verbatim, "I think you're faking your anxiety to get out of class."
Yeah.
And that really, that's basically the end of my story. But that,
Bye, guys.
Yeah, bye. That's where I kind of realized that not everybody gets it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I hate that we're having to talk over
yard work.
yard work right now. Again, our production is gonna get so much better. I swear, guys. I promise. Please keep watching.
Yeah.
If you hear a buzzing sound, it's the the buzzing sound that you hear is the yard
leaf blower.
Yeah. It's the people doing the yard work. I'm not like trying to. I'm not trying to sound bougie or anything.
We're 50 minutes in. I feel like it's a good time to kind of.
This is a good time to cut it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we really this is exactly what I wanted to do. So we are back now, just to give you an outro. But like what I said before, you know, the production, it's going to get better. We're going to really figure this out. We want to really turn this into a legitimate thing. We want people to start talking about, you know, mental illness and overall mental health and everything. But as well as we want to get people we want to be the better part of your day. And whoever made it to the very end of this video, thank you so much. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to us just go completely off track.
From here to there, then
right.
there, then back here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, because again, very first episode, we're just figuring this out. We will get things so much more streamlined and easier for you guys to watch and listen to. But thank you guys so much, especially if you made it to the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for listening to us just bullshit the entire time. It's been about an hour. We really, really appreciate all the support and the excitement that you guys build up for us when we started first talking about starting the podcast or announced that we were doing a podcast and everything. We really hope to, again, just be the better part of your day. So yeah. I don't really have any closing this is courtroom, but I don't really have any closing statements. I just wanted to really say thank you, and that was it. So we hope to see you guys again next week, and I'm really counting on us having a better setup next week.
Hopefully.
And stay sane. Jesus, stay sane.
Yeah.
God. I mean, that's
it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's pretty much it.
Okay.